Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul, and today I wanted to show you guys how I do vocal chops in FL Studio, because I had a really kick-ass lesson with Adam the other day where I'd actually never really done vocal chops before, and I felt like it added like a lot to my production. So yeah, let me just show you how I do it in FL Studio. By no means do I think this is like the best or the only way to do it, but this way works for me and I think it's pretty cool, so hopefully you learned something. So let me show you guys the part of the song that I was thinking about adding them, and I'll kind of play it before and then after I added some, and then I'll show you guys how I do it. So this is starting like 8 bars before the sub kicks in. So anyway, you get the idea, and really what I'm listening for is in sort of the high-mid range. It seems to be missing a lot of content, and that's some of the space that I'm going to be trying to fill up with these vocal chops. So when I added the vocal chops, this is kind of what, very preliminarily, it sounded like. So take a listen. So you kind of hear the effect that I'm going for. So the way that I do this is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a new instrument track here, and I'm going to do it under this vocals group, just because that's how I group them. And since this is a vocal track, I'm actually going to just take the leads, the lead vocals, the dry ones, and use them to chop up. And of course, if you're doing a track that doesn't have vocals, you can always get vocals from a sample pack, or you can get someone you know to record them. But this is nice because it's in the key of the song that I'm working in, so it makes it really easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an instrument track here, and this is one of the new features in FL20. And you don't have to do this, but this is the way that I do it. And I'm going to add a SliceX channel. And as soon as this loads up, nice thing about the instrument track is it has its own mixer track now. And I'm just going to call this vocal chops. And it's going to give me an error, and it's not going to let me, okay, now it updated. Okay, cool. So here it is, and here it is over here. So this is all linked to the same channel. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these dry leads, and I'm actually just going to drag them.
I fell in love with a fairy tale ending. It started. I fell in love with a fairy tale ending. It started with...
Okay, so now that I have the vocals in here, so what I'm going to do is, now I could go in here and add the slicing markers how I wanted to, but sometimes I find it nice to let this thing kind of do it on its own. So I'm going to click this button here to do auto slicing, and it's just going to slice it up into a bunch of places. Now if you notice, these slices are super short, and in my opinion they're too short to be very useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here and click on dull auto slicing. And I don't always do this, but if you're chopping up a loop, like something with percussion that has a lot of transients, then this maybe medium auto slicing will hit these transients. But for something like this, it doesn't really know what to do. So I'm just going to check dull. And now notice how it's kind of chopped it up in a much more sort of reasonable fashion. Still probably a little bit more choppy than I'd like, but it'll do for now. And if you notice here down here, it's actually mapped all of these slices across the keyboard. So if I go ahead and play the keyboard, any notes on this keyboard, it'll play these different chops or slices of this vocal.
What to do, just when
So it sounds pretty cool, but right now it's really dry. So this is the point where I would actually find that adding a little bit of reverb and delay may do a lot, and maybe even some sidechaining like an LFO tool. So first thing I'm going to do is add some delay, and this is just like sort of a ping pong delay that I'm using on a send. But rather than giving it its own send, I'm just going to create, just use this delay. That way I can kind of adjust it. And obviously we want the try all the way up. Here we don't. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn up the feedback. So actually you can hear me.
What needed was needed.
Okay, so that's sounding pretty good, and maybe is what I'll do is add a big reverb on here as well. Well, just like Arts Acoustic, nothing too complicated. So go ahead and drag that on here, and it takes a second. May give me an error. Okay, cool. And I'm going to turn the dry all the way up, of course, and I may take the wet down to. I usually start with -6 for something like this, and then turn it up as needed. And then finally, so what I'm going to do is, after all this stuff, I'm just going to do a simple high pass, just to kind of get rid of any sort of offending frequencies that would be down here in this lower region. There really shouldn't be anything, but it doesn't hurt to cut it anyway. And from there, that's kind of a good start. Now, the other thing that I generally like to do, and once I kind of pencil in a pattern here, I may change this. So, is also add a trance gate, but I'll kind of do that in a second. So, really what it helps to do is just come over here and just start playing notes and find ones that work. And I find it helpful to play it sort of with the kick drum or with some other stuff, maybe some percussion, to kind of get an idea of what to do. So I'm going to mute this other one and just create a new pattern. Go ahead and vocal chops, and I'm just going to put it right here, and let's take a listen. So that actually sounds pretty good to me. And maybe for the sake of simplicity is just duplicating this. Another nice thing that FL allows you to do is I can go under here and go to note pan. And sometimes I just find it to be kind of nice to just pan a few of these notes different directions. So this would be like maybe a little bit off the right speaker, a little bit off the left speaker. So when it comes through here, and just kind of panning these notes different directions kind of can give it a little bit of movement. And that, in addition to having the ping pong delay, can really spread this across the stereo field and kind of fill up the left and right portion of your mix that I've personally found. And, just adding some variation in the second pattern. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing this, but, you kind of get the idea of what you do. Now, the last thing that I want to do is I'm going to add a trance gate with gross beat and then automate the amount. And I find this to be very helpful, especially if you do this after all of the effects that you do. You can get a really kind of interesting gated effect. So I'm going to add gross beat, and for now, I'm just going to put it on just sort of like a 64th note. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to automate this amount here in the piano roll. And I like doing this in the piano roll because I can see where the notes are as opposed to creating an automation clip. So what I'm going to do is right click here and click Edit Events, and I want to be editing it on the same channel here. So I'm going to go over here and click Gross Beat Mix Level. So now I'm editing the amount of trance gate. And usually I find these longer notes is when it's really interesting to kind of give it a little bit of an effect. And for these shorter notes, it doesn't need it as much. So you'll kind of hear what the effect sounds like with this on. And at this point, it's not a bad idea to, repeat this, make some changes here, and then repeat this part again. And another nice thing is you can go in and play with the velocities, keep it interesting. Sometimes these shorter notes that have like plosives, like big P's or S's, can come through kind of hard. So sometimes it helps to turn those down a little bit. And the reason I like having the trance gate after all the effects is you can actually see it'll wash the tail over. So when it gets to these little short chops here, with all the reverb and delay on it, adding the effect really kind of washes it over, and it creates a more sort of dramatic effect as opposed to having it after. So you can hear the delay of these guys kind of getting washed over, and then these eighth notes here triggering, and then this guy. So these are all just different notes that are triggering, and I just kind of have fun with it. And the idea is, be creative, have some fun, and yeah. So hope you guys find this helpful, and good luck in all of your production. Peace out.